Hello everyone, and welcome to Let's Play Trick and Treat. Trick and Treat is a 2016 visual novel game. It's supposed to be a horror-themed visual novel game, and I'm going into this completely blind. I only know that it is developed by Eternal Night Studios. So I figured this would be a nice treat for the spooky month of Halloween, playing a nice little horror-themed story game. Now, I don't know how long this is. I do know, if we take a look at the extras, there are 7 different endings. And there are a lot of stuff to unlock in the extras. Maybe we'll get to it, maybe we won't. Now, depending on how long this game is, we may go through it one time, or we may go through it several times, trying to collect the different endings. As I understand, there is sort of a New Game Plus kind of function, so it probably would benefit us to take at least 2 playthroughs through Trick and Treat. But that's enough talking about that. Let's start the story. Alright, I think it's fair to mention that although I'm playing this game in English, English is not the only option for this game. I think it may have originally been produced in Spanish. I haven't found a affirmative answer one way or the other. So the English may not be, let's say, 100% as accurate as possible. The sound of our steps, combined with that of the occasional nocturnal animal, is the only thing we can hear. It's terribly dark in this place. The dense vegetation makes it impossible to see the sky or light from the moon. Our flashlights are the only thing that light up our way. At times like this, one begs not to run out of battery. We walk without knowing what we are really looking for, or better said, for no reason. We are just a group of boys bored with our lives. Yeah, we've all been there. Trying to create a lasting memory on this night, instead of just staying home doing nothing. Today is October 31st, All Hallows Eve, better known as Halloween. 3 young men walk through a dark, but up until now nothing special forest, me being one of them. We are doing it to prove our courage. It's too bad there isn't a girl here to see how brave we are. Seeing it like that, one could say this is a meaningless effort. For a moment I stop to look at my watch. It's 1:49 a.m. That means we have been walking aimlessly for more than 2 hours now. I'm sure that many people would find a place like this terrifying. Once you get used to it, the fear disappears, making it feel like normal. What makes us afraid of the dark is that we cannot know what hides in it, what lurks in the shadows. But this is clearly an empty darkness. At that moment I sigh, feeling how tired my legs are. What is the point of being here? Clearly we demonstrated what we wanted. It would be best to return. I should tell them. I was about to speak when suddenly the atmosphere in the forest becomes strange. Suddenly a cold chill runs through my body. It was like any other chill, except it was not going away. For no reason, the air's temperature dropped from one second to the other. So much so, my breath becomes visible, turning into mist. It doesn't end there. The air is now filled with a rotten smell, just a little short from being unbearable. Images of worms and flies soon appear in my mind, giving me a really unpleasant feeling. We all stop at that moment. What's happening? I ask, confused, while turning to look at my friends. By the expression on their faces, it was easy to know that they were just as lost as I was. It was then we heard footsteps nearby that did not come from any of us. We all got dead quiet after that. I don't know if it was out of fear, or to check if it was not a mistake, but we stayed motionless, like statues, without making a noise. Just looking at each other's faces, wondering the same thing. What was happening? As if I could know. So I'm guessing Axel is our character? We heard the steps again. They clearly belong to a human, or at least a large animal, but there is something strange about them. It sounds as if the person walked dragging one foot. Just thinking about it made me shiver. Damn, why is this happening? It makes no sense. We should have returned home before, but now it's too late to regret it. I have the feeling that we are being stalked by someone. The strange footsteps stop, but I'm still feeling the presence nearby. I don't know where it is, but I know that it's looking at me. That cursed thing is looking at me. My heart is beating anxiously. It's almost as if my body was telling me to get out of there. But strangely, my friends seemed unable to perceive it. It seems that it's gone. It must have just been an animal, said one of them, convinced that we were safe. I would like to believe that too. We had a sigh of relief. However, bad luck would soon strike us again. Unexpectedly, the forest becomes darker than before in just the blink of an eye. But that wasn't the fault of the forest, but our flashlights which went out. Of the three, only mine was still working. What's going on? Did the batteries die? Asked one of them scared, while they both beat them desperately, as if that was going to revive them. I can't blame them. The idea of walking in the darkness was not pleasant for anyone. But after a few moments we had no choice but to resign ourselves to that. Once more the sounds of our footsteps is heard. But the silence is different now. We are not quiet because we have nothing to say, but because we are afraid. We continue walking despite the fear that invades us. Visibility is almost zero, but we have no choice. In theory, we were walking back looking for the exit, but I cannot remember anything of this forest. We could be walking in circles, and I would never notice it until too late. I hate the thought of it. I just want to get out of here. Suddenly, my thoughts are silenced. We hear the footsteps of someone or something. Once more, the three of us become statues, awaiting the presence to go. I hold my breath while feeling my heart beating anxiously. Damn, get away from here and leave us alone. Unexpectedly, the steps are heard closer. This time, do not disappear, but rather come at us. I can't stand it. Desperately, I move my flashlight everywhere, looking for the author of those footsteps, hoping for light to reveal their identity and erase our fears. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Is that all there is around here? Just empty air? My anxiety grows with each failed attempt. I refuse to believe that it was a ghost. Suddenly, when I move the flashlight again, I see a silhouette. I could not distinguish what it was, but for a moment the light revealed something. Quickly, I point to the same place, only to discover it was gone. I hold my breath anxiously. It was not an illusion. I am sure that I saw something. It was then that I heard something nearby. Without even thinking, I aimed the light towards that place. What I found leaves us paralyzed with an expression of disbelief on our faces. It is a white cat, with eyes of an intense red, which stands before us. Her look is not the friendliest, to say something. Somehow I get the feeling it's a female cat. Suddenly it lets out a thunderous meow that leaves us terrified. It sounded more like a lion roaring than a simple cat. The echo of her meow was heard through the forest, making it sound more sinister than it should be. It was then that suddenly an inexplicable force hits us three. I fall to the ground, and little by little my eyelids close. The fatigue becomes unbearable. I lose consciousness on the ground in the forest without knowing what was going to happen with me. Interlude, before night falls. Alright, so I guess we've gone back a little bit in time. And this is before they go out to the forest. Well, that's what I'm guessing. Let's see if I'm right. It is a day like any other, so normal that it was almost painful. The only special thing that could be said about it is that it's October 31st. Far were the memories when I was a kid and went out with my friends to ask for sweets from house to house. Just remembering it made me sigh. I feel nostalgic. Some things were better when I was a child, or at least it seems like that. There were some good costumes, whether of superheroes or monsters. My friends and I, on the other hand, had to use our imagination. Creativity was our costume, you could say, no matter how funny it could sound. I remember that my mother once painted red my face and told me, "You will be the devil." But it seems only she saw it that way. When we went from home to home, everyone says I was the tomato man. But those things didn't matter to me since we always had a good time. If I asked for candy now, even if I had the best costume, I'm sure no one would give me anything. except perhaps a scolding for acting like a child when I am 17 years old. But anyways, I can't stay in the past. I must live in the present, no matter how little exciting that might be. Back to reality, we are a group of friends who don't have any plans for today. We are still not old enough to go to a disco, okay? And I doubt guys as us would have any luck in that environment. The other option would be go to a party, meet girls and have fun. Everything perfect, except that nobody has invited us. Not being popular has its disadvantages. Hey, Axel, let's have a couple of matches. What do you say? My friend Steven called my attention while playing with a game console. Rushard, I believe that's what the game is called. A fast and quite complicated fighting game for me. I would normally agree to play with him, but for some reason I don't feel in the mood today. I have no desire to play now. I replied with discouragement. I almost feel bad for doing it. Boring. The AI is no rival for me. Stephen said with confidence. That you're playing on normal difficulty does not help your argument. I don't feel like losing, but if you want you can challenge to Alfred. I said, leading the attention to my other friend. I don't know how to play that, answered Alfred, doubting for a second. He's sitting behind the PC, but it seems he isn't doing anything interesting. The screen only shows a lot of text. I think he's in Wikipedia. Hey, don't you have something more fun to do? I asked with discouragement, without even thinking about what he was reading. Alfred looks at me surprised. The actual problem of society is that people are not interested in discovering their history. Well, you know what? There's a good point behind that. He's one of those pseudo-intellectuals, always looking for any rare information to appear smarter than others. When we forget our past mistakes, we are doomed to repeat them. He added later. What are you talking about? This village is small, and its story is not interesting at all. Nothing outside of the normal has ever happened in it. Alfred laughs mockingly after hearing that. Your ignorance is worthy of praise. He pauses, filling his chest with pride. The very fact it is a small town is the reason it's full of mysteries. Did you know that 20 years ago on this date a man disappeared? So, what about it? I asked without being impressed or even interested in the least. Things like that happen all the time in all places. As I thought, you don't know the history despite living in this very place. Alfred said while adjusting his glasses in an arrogant gesture. There's a legend behind the disappearance. That is what I was reading. After listening to him, I took a look back at the computer screen with curiosity. It's then that I noticed it was not Wikipedia, but some other page. Come on, read this and learn a little. Alfred said, inviting us to read what was on the screen. Both Stephen and I moved closer to read it. Alright, the town of Abingdon, Oxfordshire County, 1994. I came to this town with only 4,000 inhabitants to support them in an investigation. Truth is that never in my life have I seen something this strange. I won't say your typical detective-ish nonsense that I have seen thousands of strange things in my life. I've seen many crimes, yes, some difficult to solve, but all of them were human. Even if you don't know how they managed to perpetrate the crime, you know that they are people like anyone else. In this case, I don't think I'm able to say the same thing. Truth is, I can't understand what happened. I was called for the disappearance of a man named Matthew Graham, 23 years, single. The last time he was seen, he was returning home from a Halloween party. He drank alcohol but was still sober. Or at least that's what witnesses said. Anyway, this is not something which can be explained with a simple drunkenness. He apparently got lost on the way home and decided to enter the forest called Oakwood. It had rained yesterday, so the ground was wet and muddy. We could easily find his traces, which were leading deep inside the forest. Apparently, he walked for 3 hours before stopping. I say stop, but the truth is we don't know what happened then. The tracks suddenly ended up in a clearing in the forest, and that's all. No evidence of struggle, no other trace, pieces of the clothing on the ground, no blood, no more footprints, or anything else. The depth of his last footprint and the position they were in indicate that he was still walking. At no point he stood still. It was as if he had vaporized into the air, with all of his clothes in the middle of his walk. Obviously, I can't believe such a thing, but I can't give another explanation. The only thing I remember is that near the footprints I sensed a faint smell of rot. However, there were no animal corpses nearby. It is ridiculous to think he suddenly started to decay and became earth. In the end, the case was closed in just 3 days. With no evidence of any kind, we couldn't say anything, but he had decided to escape from the village. However, while officially there was no more to do, I couldn't sleep in peace. Thinking about what could have happened to him took away my sleep. In my mind, I thought of all sorts of theories. Like maybe things was a plan developed by Matthew. But in the end, they all seemed impossible. I decided to investigate more on the issue. I searched the town for more stories, and to my surprise, I found 4 more, all young men. The story was always the same. They walked in the forest alone, disappearing without trace. Even more curious is that all of them disappeared on the same date, October 31st. But there is more, a detail that completely eliminates the possibility that there is a killer or kidnapper behind this. And that is the separation of the years. Roger Bacon disappeared in 1924. Mitchell Smith in 1867. Jason Black in 1813. And worst of all, Oswald Taylor disappeared in 1707. It couldn't be possible. My curiosity led me to dig deeper. I thought that the answer may be in the past of the forest. It was then when I discovered that what seemed to be a simple and boring forest actually hid a great story. Before it was called Oakwood or Oaks Forest, the place was called Witchwood. The word witch has a huge similarity with witch. Taking into consideration its old name and the languages changed over time, that it was the Forest of Witches. Apparently more than 400 years ago, the people of the village believed witches lived in the woods. Unfortunately, all the information is already lost. They were stories told in voice, without a properly written record. I just know that with the change of religion to Christian, people stopped seeing the witches with good eyes and began to hunt them. Apparently, the last one before her death cast a curse on the forest, which even today should continue to exist. Anyways, obviously I cannot accept something like that as the answer. In the end, I have no other choice than accepting that each one of them escaped from the village, using the legend of the forest to make it look like something supernatural. Interesting story. I didn't know that such a story was hiding in this town. I said honestly surprised. Even if it is a lie, it managed to hold my interest. Wait, there's something more. Alfred said at the same time he scrolls to the comments. We read what is written there. A couple of comments call our attention. Both of them talk about some creature. At the time they felt a horrible fear for what could happen to them. Well, the 2 comments share great similarities, but they could have been written by the same person. There are many others that deny it. Looks like many people went to the forest because of the legend, but couldn't find anything. I thought that you only read those things to look more cool before the girls, replied Stephen as a joke. Alfred giggles with little shame. Partly yes. He admitted it. That was a secret everybody silently knew. Well, well, now we have an activity for tonight. Stephen said at the same time he makes a face overflowing with enthusiasm. What? I asked, completely lost. I thought we were just killing time. Simple, let's go to that forest. Stephen replied without hesitation. He seemed really fascinated by the story. Are you insane? Said Alfred, unable to believe what he just heard. You only need to look at his face to know he did not like the idea. Despite everything you've heard, you want to go. Of course, it'd be a test of courage among us 3. Pried Stephen full of confidence, perhaps too much. He should relax a bit. Don't tell me you're afraid. No, why should I be afraid? Answered Alfred. At the same time he folds his arms, making a false gesture of security. It's more than obvious that you are afraid, Alfred. Almost as much as when you have to talk with a girl. What about you, Axel? Don't tell me you won't come. Suddenly Stephen asks me, at the same time looking at me mockingly. Don't tell me you want to be the chicken of the group. Oh, I hate that tone of voice he used. I will never give you that, I said without thinking, showing a confident smile and look. Well, let's not say more. Take your coats, backpacks, flashlights, and some food. We're going to the forest. Stephen said, full of energy. Yeah. We three said in unison, as if we were going to have some kind of private party, not really knowing what we were doing or what we were going to find. Alright, 2:13 a.m. About half an hour after, I guess, the start of the story. I awake completely confused, not knowing how much time had passed. My head hurts like hell, but I can't blame it. Fortunately, the pain goes away quickly, just as my confusion. Soon I come back to my senses. My flashlight is lying on the ground, shining towards empty air. I immediately pick it up. It was my only protection against the darkness that surrounds me. I remember that Steve and Alfred were with me. Stephen! Alfred! Can you hear me? Without thinking, I screamed their names in the dark, while trying to find them with my flashlight. There is no trace of them. They are gone. Where the hell are they? And what the heck just happened? I really don't understand anything. Shit, we should have stayed at home. This is not proof of courage. We could be in danger. I have to find them. Alright, still 2:19. No choices yet in the story. It just keeps going. Well, let's keep playing. Let's see what happens. Little time has passed since I started to look for my friends, and I already can't stand this place. I'm going crazy in this forest. The darkness that covers it is unnatural. It is a darkness that steals your own sanity, replacing it with anxiety. To make it worse, the air is damp and cold as in winter, carrying a strong rot smell. As if there were corpses of animals hidden throughout the forest. The atmosphere in this place is oppressive, but every step you take it makes you more uncomfortable. Since I started to look for my friends, I felt that something is watching me, but there is nothing. I sigh with my voice full of frustration. I just want to get out of here. I continue walking devoid of any hope. No matter where I look or how much I walk, I find nothing. I cannot even hear the sounds of animals. Rather, it seems they're already dead and rotting. No, I have to calm myself. I said to myself. I stopped for a moment to rest. I breathed deeply, but the rotten air of this place does me no good. Immediately I start to cough as if I had something stuck in my throat. Shit, what am I going to do? This cursed forest seemed endless. And even if by miracle I could escape, I cannot abandon Stephen and Alfred. I'm really screwed up. Again I sigh, feeling on the verge of tears. My frustration is building up, but I have to do my best to keep calm. If I fall into despair, then there is no doubt I'll be joining the list of missing persons. In the end, I decided to keep walking. Step by step, I should get somewhere. At least I was convinced that staying in the same place would not do me any good. Even if it was only to deceive myself in feeling that I'm doing something, I wanted to continue walking. Time passes without any changes. Only the sounds of my footsteps can be heard. Knowing that as soon as you stop you'll be surrounded by dead silence is a good incentive to keep walking. But my legs were already hurting. Suddenly I hear a crack at my feet. Instantly I take a step back and look below to see what just made that sound. What is this? I whispered to myself, surprise, discovering that I had stepped on animal bone. I believe it's from an animal, although I do not rule out the possibility that it belongs to a person. But for my own good, I prefer not to think about that. An expression of anguish is drawn on my face. It is best to ignore it. I have to keep walking. Suddenly, my flashlight reveals something. Without hesitation, I point towards there again. Kitty! Only to realize with the surprise that it is the white cat. The one from before which made that awful meow, but this time I find it lying on the ground. It appears to be fainted and is wounded. Then what should I do? Okay, so here's our first choice. So do we ignore the cat or do we pick her up? Well, we can't just ignore a cat. We gotta take care of it. So I think we'll take care of it, and then we'll save, and we'll call it an episode. So let's pick her up. It's best to continue without waking her. That cat is dangerous. It's her fault that I ended up in this place and my friends are missing. But even knowing that, for some strange reason, I can't help but feel sorry for her. Even if it is unnatural, it is still an animal. I then bend down to see her closer. She's unconscious, and there's a thin line of blood coming from her mouth. I'm a real idiot. I said to myself at the same time I cleaned the blood from her mouth with a handkerchief that I had with me. Fortunately, she doesn't wake up. Then I close her mouth, making her appearance a little better. Now she seems to be peacefully sleeping. After a long sigh, I decide to pick her up carefully. I don't know what the power of the cats are, but if she brought me here, she maybe can return me to my world. With her in my arms, I decide the best thing I can do is continue walking.